Welcome to the Create or Die podcast. Today I will be speaking with my guest, Fubby14. How you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing today?
I'm doing really good. We were talking a little bit earlier about some projects you got going, so I'm super happy to dive into everything that you're doing at the moment. But to begin, let's start with who is Fubby?
Oh man, I guess I'm an artiste, or at least trying to be. Number one, first and foremost, but also kind of an explorer of Web3. Like, spent a lot of time just kind of playing around in all the spaces. Did founder work on a couple of projects. I don't know, but now I'm focused primarily on art, so I release as much art as I can on the Solana ecosystem.
Nice. And before Web3, would like your main title you would give yourself, would it have always been artist, or is that more of a recent thing?
I guess that's more of a recent thing. When I was in my kind of back in the day when I had a career and I was doing all that, I was a creative director in the advertising world. So that, I guess that's what I would have called myself back then, but not anymore.
Wow. And did you go to school? Did you go to college or anything like that?
Yeah, I went to school for visual communications, which is just like a fancy way of saying graphic design.
Yeah, for sure. And what school was that? I mean, if you don't want to say, you don't have to say.
No, that's fine. I went to ASU.
ASU? Oh, okay.
University.
Nice. I got some friends who went out there. I know it's like famous to be like the epitome of like a college. Like, you get the whole university experience.
Yes, it's the party school, party capital school of it's on top of all the lists always.
Wow, man. That's epic. So are you from Arizona? I know that's like
yeah, I was born and raised
oh wow,
in the Phoenix area.
Oh, nice. What was it like growing up there?
I don't know, boring. It's just kind of like urban sprawly, like suburby. Like, I grew up pretty poor, like, so I kind of grew up on like public housing, and we like grew up in welfare and food stamps and that stuff. So like, but I mean, whatever, it wasn't that bad.
That's crazy. I think because we had a pre-chat for anyone listening, so I know a little bit of your story, but I think that upbringing is going to have an interesting kind of a roundabout to who you are today. So I think that's really cool, especially with you managing to come back with a whole new life scenario.
Oh yeah, I definitely like had the poor kid energy and put myself through college and didn't want to stay poor. Like, worked really, really hard. It was like definitely like super money focused through all my 20s, like trying to make stack as much money as possible, because a lot of that like just poor kid energy, and I knew the value of a dollar in a different way.
Yeah, that's interesting. We hadn't gotten into that last time. I was always wondering, because I think a lot of people have ambition, but for most people, the drive to take that extra step, especially for like your entire 20s and 30s, like that motivation tends to have to come somewhere deeper than just I want to be something or do something. It's like a thing where you have to work really hard and you have to find that success.
Yeah. No, and I definitely had that. I feel like I don't have that anymore, which is funny.
Do you feel like now that you've been able to kind of reach a level of financial success, did you have like a transition period where you felt that you had to find a new fire that wasn't just survival?
Yeah, for sure. I still feel like I'm in that transition period. Like, like, it's funny you ask it that way, because it's definitely, I don't know if I have the fire for anything like that. I pour myself into art, and that's my passion, and I feel like I have a lot of energy and a lot of fire for that, but it's not the same as it was when it was, like you said, survival. Like, it's different, and so maybe it's one of those things that like you never get to replace that level of hunger because you're never starving again, and so like maybe I'll never feel that same hunger because I'm not starving. Yeah. And so I have to get used to, I think that might be it. I have to get used to like kind of a different level of motivation where it's like, it can still be very high, but it's
Yeah.
not that same like I don't want to say like kill or be killed mentality where it was like, yeah, this is a zero sum game, and now I don't feel like anything is a zero sum game. I feel like I'm always down to like share. I'm down to help. I'm down to like
Mm.
hold the door open for somebody else. Like I'm not trying to kick in the door for myself.
Oh wow, wow, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I've read a lot about like entrepreneurship and stuff like that, and I'm not gonna say your age or anything, but I do know that like when a lot of people talk about like the different phases in life and kind of knowing a little bit about you, I know they say like at the beginning it's all about you and accumulating, but then it kind of transitioned and the older you get, the more you're able to mentor and give opportunities to others. And so it seems like you're right on that track of being able to like you did what you needed to do for yourself and now you're able to help others. So that's good that you are kind of able to like follow that track.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the that does feel like the path that I'm on. Is it went from very me focused to now it can be more of a us focused.
Hmm. Man, that's super cool. I know that like for myself, I spent like years trying to get my first job in kind of art and design. I had normal jobs before that, and I remember getting my first job at Oddfellows, and I was super pumped and happy to have that job. But having a paycheck after years of not being able to have one, there was like a few months where, like you said, that fire wasn't there, and I didn't understand because I had never not been in that survival mode, and so it was hard to understand like how to move forward without that fire under your ass. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I feel like
Yeah.
life is tricky in that way that like you have to be in dire straits to be as motivated as you possibly can. You can't be like living nice and having a comfy situation and also be the number one peak pinnacle of motivation. I
One
think that's
hundred
one of those
percent.
things interesting about like professional athletes is how
Yeah.
they manage to do that. They manage to
Yeah.
make millions and millions of dollars, but still stay so cutthroat. I think that's why most of them are probably a little bit insane.
Yeah. For sure. Definitely. And when they don't have it, I think you see it a lot more in fighters than you see in like basketball players or football players because I think they've, for such a young age, like playing football or playing basketball, by the time you make it to the pros, that lifestyle is the only lifestyle you know. But I know for like a lot of fighters and boxers and stuff, I think it was Mike Tyson who said that it's hard to wake up at 5 a.m. in satin sheets or something like that. And you can see it in people like Conor McGregor. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's exactly it. You're hungry and you have the energy, that fire in your belly, and then you get those satin sheets, and all of a sudden maybe the fire in your belly is not so hot.
yeah, man, yeah. That's a whole like, yeah, stage of life. But I want to maybe dive into some of the creative stuff with you a little more too, because being a
For
creative
sure.
director in advertising and stuff like that, that's its own journey that a lot of people are trying to get to in and of itself. And so I want to know, like, when you were a kid, I know you said you went to school for visual communications. Like, leading up to that as a kid, what were you into that made you decide art and design was going to be a life path for you?
I don't even know if my situation was a little bit peculiar.
Mm.
I was kind of a bad kid. Like I was definitely more into like scamming on girls and doing drugs than I
Oh,
was into
dang.
doing school. Like in high school, like I was definitely a bad kid. But I also was like super into like internet forums, and
Okay.
so everybody would have like signatures, and so
Mm.
I got really good at making the signatures like that are just like essentially like little banners. So I had like a pirated version
Mm.
of Photoshop, and so I would make the little banners for people on this thing, and I would like that was my I was like the artiste of the forum.
Wow.
So I started that was probably my first exposure into like actually doing like some kind of like visual art. So like I started digitally. Like I know most people start like in an art class or something, but like I never took in high school or nothing. I never took a proper art class. I never took any of that stuff.
Oh,
I
wow.
just was doing it digitally, and then I actually pirated my first copy of Cinema 4D when I want to say 16,
Oh, wow.
and started playing with that, and ended up taking like taking that on and learned that, like taught myself as much as I could. And then when I graduated high school, I actually went and worked for a newspaper, and I was doing newspaper design, like right out of high school. And I didn't
Wow.
even, and I tried to get a promotion, and they were like, "We can't give you a promotion. You don't have a degree." And so that's when I knew I had to go back to college. And then
Wow.
after I went back to college, like I ended up getting, like midway through college, I ended up getting an art director job. And so I was working as I was finishing college, and like from there it was just kind of the, I don't know, like the way you would think about it, just like grinding, getting promotion here, getting promotion there, like
Mm-hmm.
working hard, like trying to outwork everybody.
Mm-hmm. Wow, man, that's cool. And I know we talked a little bit about some of the types of projects you were working on. Do you want to speak to what? Because when people hear art director and design, they might think of like a few different things. So do you want to go into like what types of projects you were getting in
Oh,
on?
for sure. Like I was definitely more in the advertising, motion graphics, like
Mm-hmm.
60-second commercial spot um,
Mm.
field of like advertising. So, and like clients include like Boeing, Las Vegas, Bank of America, Comcast, like Pepsi, like just a ton of like big clients. And then a little bit later in my career, I got into doing healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
and then like whatever. I'm not going to go into the clients, but like just like the healthcare ecosystem is a lot different, and so you end up making videos that are like the way that the disease operates and the way that the
Mm.
drugs operate and stuff. And so that was like a whole different vibe, because it was like half the time you'd be working on something that never even going to see the light of day, but
Yeah.
it's like a preparatory thing.
Mm. Yeah, most of that stuff tends to be like internal documentation or like pitching for funding and stuff like that.
Well, a lot of the time it would be like a drug candidate, and
Oh,
sometimes the
okay.
drug candidate doesn't make it all the way through, and so
Mm-hmm.
you've done some of the work for like leading up to it, and it's like, well, that candidate, like the phase 3 trial, like didn't make it, so
Mm-hmm.
you end up, all that work ends up not being for naught, kind of, because they have to like go from the they have to go back to the drawing board and find another drug.
I see. I see. Oh wow, that's super interesting. It's like that's the cool thing about like design, motion design is you get to have like a level of like I don't know how superficial it is, but a level of familiarity with like industries that you would if you picked a job in any other industry, you would never get to learn a little bit about what all these other people have going
Yeah,
on.
sure. I know a bunch of stuff about like how cancer drugs work, right?
That's
Just because
crazy.
I had to work on that stuff for a long time, and so it's just
Mm-hmm.
like I understand a lot about like how how the way that cancer drugs like um, target the cancer, and how
Wow.
they work, and like with the inner machinations of like, oh, this thing inhibits this certain piece of this cell, and this thing inhibits this certain piece of this cell, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, it's wild how all that stuff works.
Yeah, and having to animate it gives you a different level of understanding as well because you have to like think deeply about physically how it moves, and I feel like that translates to you having a different level of understanding about what you're creating. So that's super cool. At this time, were you making a lot of
Yeah, we were
personal
building the
work?
stuff that like the.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, not really. No worries. Not really. I feel like I was a lot of it was at the time when I was working healthcare. A lot of it was like mentor work, kind of building out like I, I don't know. It's a lot of like overhead work, because
Mm.
after a certain while you don't get to get your hands dirty as much. Like,
Oh,
so I
okay.
would still try to get in there and like do some animating, but like a lot of it was just more like paperworky. Like there's the
Mm.
joke that you start off in Photoshop and you end up in Excel,
Yeah.
and it's like seems to be kind of true. Like I spent a lot of my time like making PowerPoints and stuff, and so that was like definitely a part. That was like the time in my career where I was like definitely getting to the place where it was just like, ooh, this isn't rewarding to me anymore in the same way. Like,
Yeah.
and it was the most like financially rewarding that I had ever received. But at the same time, like all the other things that I would get from vocation just weren't there, and they were getting less and less and less. That's right around the time where I knew I'd like need to try and focus on retirement.
Yeah. Oh wow. Well, since you went there, let's get into it. What was kind of that process of preparing for retirement, and how did you plan? How did you get? What was the mindset shift? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that a big mindset shift was deciding to leave New York and the cost of living and moving back to Arizona where I was born because the cost of living was much cheaper. So we were able to do a lot of things that we wouldn't have been able to do in New York, and the money goes a lot further. And so it's like definitely the ability to find a place where you could say that you're comfortably retired in Arizona is a lot different than the way that you can be comfortably retired in New York. And so it was something that was going to be unattainable for me if I was still living in New York. And so that was probably the biggest shift, was coming back. And it just so happened that our parents are getting a little older and their health is kind of getting a little questionable. So it's a nice thing to be able to be back, to be part of that kind of like end of life journey with your parents.
Most definitely. Dang. So were you following anyone? I know there's a lot of people who get into like finance and they get into, I think it's like Dave Ramsey. Is that one of the guys? Were you following any sort of track for financial freedom? Like any financial
stack
experts?
money? Not really. Like, I didn't have any exposure to any of that stuff at that point. My thing was stack money and buy stocks for a long time. And so I had just been stacking money and buying stocks. And we'd always lived like super frugal. Like when I was living in New York, we lived in a 1-bedroom when like I could have afforded like a 3-bedroom, but we decided to live in a 1-bedroom because it was cheaper. And so it was always just like, it was that poor kid in me that always still like really valued the dollar and was like, oh, you know, if I save this dollar, I can get something better next week. And if I save this dollar another week, I can get, like, I always had that mindset of delayed gratification. And I think that a lot of it was just like I had been accidentally probably following some of these like guru things, like just because of the way I was kind of my upbringing. Yeah. And so I found myself in a situation where it was just like, oh, look, we got like a big pile of money and we can go and we can buy a house and I can kind of take it easy and go through and kind of find what I was going to do. And it was like, at first it was like maybe I would find another career, and now I think I'm pretty much settled on just like being retired and like I don't want to have another career.
Wow, that's super interesting. I think you know, this podcast is mostly focused on, well, the tagline is art, design, and NFTs, and in our industries, like plural, is so focused on the work and continuing to do the work and continuing to get more work, but there's not much talk about like financial freedom or an off ramp. And so I think that's the thing that's so unique about your story, is that you figured those things out, and now you're able to have another level of freedom because you figured them out, rather than just getting the next job at the next studio.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of kind of the common thing is to like get more money and spend as much money as you make, and like get more money and spend as much money as you make. And like, it's, if you get a raise and you get a better job, then that means you get a nicer car, that means you get a nicer house. And so I was always just like, you know what, like, this is what I say, like, people are like, oh, you're retired, and I'm always just like, well, yeah, man, but I drive a Kia. Like, I'm not fancy retired. I'm not balling out of control. Like, I just kept it calm and cool, and like, I'm not out here spending as much money. I didn't buy the biggest house that I could buy. I didn't buy the nicest car that I could buy. Like, I bought things that were reasonable and below my means, and in that way I had enough left over that I was able to kind of, because I think that like anybody can, like, and whatever, it's, I obviously am in a privileged position that I'm at a point in my life where I can kind of be free and do whatever I want to do. But I think that anybody can have access to this if they just actually set their sights on what's reasonable and not
Yeah.
what is desirable.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's great. Like I would love to like drive a Lamborghini and live in like a triple decker mansion and all these things, but it's like, well, if you want to do that, then you're gonna still have to be grinding. And so if you
Yeah.
set yourself up to like I said, like I'll be driving my Kia and I'll be happy.
Yeah. I think that that's like it's not talked about enough. And even just from the chat that we had previously, where you kind of went into what your daily routine is and everything, I think that especially for artists, it is a different level of empowerment to like not have everything you do be so tied to its commercial value. And like, and we're all trying to figure out how we can get to that point, but someone like you has found a way that I've never heard anyone else talk about, like retirement at such an early age. And so I think it's important that like we lay out all these different examples of people who've managed to like not just have to get clients all the time.
Yeah, no, and I'm lucky. Like I have a mint coming up today, and I'm a little nervous about it. And I'm like, oh, it's probably not going to sell out. Like I didn't do as much marketing as I should have done, and like maybe I could have done a little bit more here. Maybe I could have done a little bit better there. Like this, that, and the other. Like I've got all these things in my head that's like making me kind of stressed out about it and feeling like, oh man, it's not going to be perfect. But also at the end of the day, like I know I'm good.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm not worried in the same level as like someone who's and whatever. Again, like I'm very privileged and very lucky that I'm in this position. Like, but I'm not having to worry about like, oh no, I need this mint to sell out because I need to pay rent. Like I'm not worried about that stuff on the same level. Which I mean is definitely freeing. It lets me kind of play with art, and like I end up doing a lot of free art, like and a lot of really cheap art because I'm not motivated by those things. I'm just motivated by sharing art at this point. And so it opens up a lot of doors. But I know that I'm definitely like super privileged to be able to do that because I've kind of like built myself this cushy bed to lay in.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're living the dream in a lot of ways, and you're doing it in such a reasonable, not bombastic, not in your face way, but you have that freedom that we're all looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I feel like in the last couple of years, like I've definitely started to take stock of like what it means to kind of be alive and what you have to do and versus like what you want to do. And it's really like there's fewer and fewer things that I have to do, and I feel very, very lucky that there's fewer and fewer things that I have to do, and I get to focus on things that I want to do.
Yeah, man, so good, so good. Yeah, man. Sorry, I had to take stock because I went down so many rabbit holes with you that so many things I'm curious to talk about. But just so that for the audience that they can get value out of it, let's talk about your journey from where you were as a creative director working with all of these different clients and how you transitioned into Web3. When did you hear about Web3 crypto, and when did you decide to put your hat in the ring?
I feel like I had been a non-believer for a long time. Of like there's a couple of buddies of mine who are like Bitcoin maxis who were like, oh, you got to get this Bitcoin when it was like $250, and I just was like, no, that's crazy. Like I don't want to. I don't know what this is. Like this is nuts. Like I'm just gonna buy Facebook stock or whatever it is I was doing. Like that was like my exposure to it initially, and then after I got into a place where like I hadn't retired yet, but I had kind of quit my job without another job. Like I was just like done with it, and I quit that job, and I was like, okay, like I'm gonna take some time for myself, and maybe find something else down the road a little bit while, but like take a little, like almost like I was taking a sabbatical kind of mindset. And during that time, I got exposed to the Chia blockchain, which was like it uses like proof of, I don't remember what it's called. Maybe it's called proof of history, but it's or no, proof of space because it uses hard drive space. And so it uses proof of space, and I built a validator node for Chia, and I was like just like as a one-off like weird hobby that I was just like, oh, I could figure this out. Like, and I was building a computer anyway, and I was like, well, I could build a computer that's a validator for this thing. And so I was farming up my Chia, and the that was my first exposure to it, and through that, like I learned about Solana, and then I was like, oh, Solana is really cool technology wise, and I started buying Solana. Then I learned about NFTs after that, and so I minted a couple of NFTs on Tezos because was checking that out. Like, just first initial like availability was the Hickathunk, and so that was like a place where you could. Sorry about that.
Yeah, just if the audience, or depending on how I cut this out, Fubby is recovering from COVID, so just I'll make sure to put that in the intro so everyone knows that you're thugging this one out for sure.
Flu game. So I minted a couple of NFTs on Tezos. I was really into Solana though, and I had gotten into the ecosystem. Like I was kind of palling around with the Solarian team. I redid their website. I was building out like the design and the UX for them. Just kind of like having fun, experimenting. Like bought a Solarian, bought some Solana monkey business. Like just early on, like trying to check things out. At that point, I had decided that I wanted to do this generative basketball project that was called Rocks. It was based off basketball stats. And I started building that. And at the same time, that's when the Solana Monkey business and Solarian started building a marketplace. And so I worked with them, and that ended up being digitalized. I don't know if some people probably listening to this probably remember that if they're really as old as me.
Well, just that for I don't mean to interrupt.
Minted out Rocks.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, please do.
Yeah, I just wanted to break down because you're. This is a lot of history in a short amount of time. Can we break it down, like, just because I think the memory is recent enough, year wise, from the Gaia blockchain when you were farming? Is that what was the term? I can't believe I'm blanking on it.
Well, it's mining is the thing.
Mining.
I guess it's yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I'm gonna definitely have to cut that out. I'm gonna make myself look so bad in front of Web3 because I blanked on that. But so you started mining. What year was that?
That was early 2021.
Okay. So 20. So you.
So that was like.
Yeah, I'll let you go. Sorry about that.
That was early 2021. Was started mining Chia, and then mid-year was when I minted my first NFT on Hickathunk. Then going into August was when I minted my first big generative drop with Rocks, and that was at the same time that we launched the marketplace for Digitalize.
Okay.
And then not soon after that, we ended up going into the exchange days.
And okay, so after you built the website with Solana Monkey Business and Solarium, shortly after that, you went into helping build exchange. Did I understand that correctly?
So what had happened was, the team at Digitalize kind of decided that there was a little bit of a disagreement on how to run things, and so the team at Digitalize moved off and decided to start their own project, and that became Exchange. So, and Digitalize, like essentially, like it was just like an amicable parting of ways to say, like, okay, like you guys want to do it this way, we're going to do it this way. Like, okay, we're going to go try it off here and do our own thing. And so that was the Exchange. Was some of the Digitalized team came and built the exchange.art.
And what was like that ethos, or when you said, because you said you guys want to do it this way, they wanted to do it that way. What was the ethos of Exchange at that time that you guys wanted to build? Was it around being like a premium one of one on Solana? Was it a UI dispute? What were the kind of the things that you guys looked at and you were like, this is what we want to set out to create?
I think it was a lot of like democratization.
Okay.
And kind of a little bit less about churning through projects as fast as possible and making a place where artists could find like rest and build. Like a big thing for me, like going into Exchange, was I wanted to make it so that this was a place that artists could make a living. Like an artist could come to this platform and make a living exclusively from this platform, and maybe not an artist in North America, but like an artist in like Southeast Asia, like could definitely come here and make it enough of a living. And I think that it's ballooned up even now that like an artist anywhere around the world could make a living. Like you don't even necessarily need to be in a place where the cost of living is a little bit lower,
Yeah.
or a lot a bit lower in some cases. Uh, so I think that that was a big one, was just like being a place for artists to actually make uh, a life and a career and a living, as opposed to just a place like, because Digitalized was definitely more of like the Magic Eden style of place.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, like it was big generative projects.
Hmm.
There was no minting option. There was no way for an artist to sign up. It was just 100% about like the. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say what was 100% about the flip, but it was like that kind of marketplace where it was like just it was like Magic Eden before Magic Eden.
Yeah, and so just because I intuit a lot of these differences because I'm not a technical person. So, but when I go on Magic Eden, I don't feel like it's a place for me as a individual artist, but I don't always 100% know why that is. So what is it? And so now that you say it, I guess the primary difference is a place like Magic Eden is like their foundation is traders, whereas Exchange is artists. But in your words, what are those things that make it so that Exchange can be that place that artists can live off of? What are those things that you guys built and did to create that environment?
It was a lot of the tools, like just being able to have a place where you can go and you can mint, right? And you can just press a button and say, okay, I want to create, and then you get to create your own NFT. Like it's just something that a lot of the bigger marketplaces, they don't care. Like the NFTs get created off platform and then they come on platform to trade.
Oh
But
wow.
with Exchange, it's you create your NFT here, you build your brand here, you build um, you build the entirety of what you're trying to do here. And so it allows for you to kind of take that as an individual and be an individual on the platform, instead of like trying to be like, okay, like if you want to have a, like you can definitely have a presence on Magic Eden, like we could figure it out, but we're going to have to do a big mint. We're going to have to mint it off platform. We're going to have to get you, I guess they auto index stuff now. So, but they'll probably auto index you and then you'll be there. And it's like, okay, and then people can trade, but you're not going to have a lot of control over, what they're trading and what they're doing. And if you're not having a bunch of volume, you're not really going to be. It's not going to make sense for you. If you're an artist who makes one piece of art, it's not going to make sense for you to be on these platforms that are about trading multiples in these huge collections.
Oh, okay. Wow. I never understood that. Wow, that's crazy. Well, yeah, I never knew that like because by the time I got into the space, I had been watching it from afar, but I wasn't on Twitter and I wasn't minting anything until November of last year, 2022. And so by the time I came in, there was already Form Function, which was the one that I got exposed to first, but Exchange was always there. And so I always took for granted that there were these places that artists could mint their own work and kind of have this like platform that was heavily bent around like an individual artist. I took these things for granted. I didn't know that this was like that
Yeah,
revolutionary.
those are the things I had to. Those are the things I had to build. Yeah,
Wow.
they weren't here at all. Like there was Olaplex. There was an auction platform that allowed you to mint. It was kind of the big place where one artist could get exposure for a long time until Exchange and Form Function came in,
Hmm.
and then that really changed the paradigm of allowing for these like actual marketplaces that allow you to just do something as simple as like mint an NFT and auction it off. Like it's just,
Hmm.
if you think about that, like I guess you'd say, like you say, you take it for granted, but like
Yeah.
if Exchange went away tomorrow, like, and Form Function has just gone away
Yeah.
recently, and it's
Yeah.
just like, well, what would you do? How would you get your art out there? And it's
Yeah.
like, well, I guess I would have to build a platform myself, or I would have to figure something else out, because there's not, like, it's not there. And so for a long time, like, it wasn't there, and it was an underserved audience. And so that was like going back to kind of the whys around Exchange. Like that was a big one of the whys, was like, hey, can we be a place that supports artists? And like I think that that was a time in my life where I got there and I got to a place where I felt really, really good about exchange. And then I had kind of realized that it was becoming a career again, and it was becoming kind of some of the things that I didn't want, as far as like the responsibilities and the bigness of it all. And so at that point, like that's when I broke from exchange and said like, we're super good. I'm still friends with all of them over there. But I broke from exchange and decided to just kind of focus on me and focus on making art. And so that's where I am now today, just kind of roving artist guy.
Yeah, man, I feel it. That's, it's crazy. I think that NFTs, like the way that they kind of happened, I think it was hard to see, especially at the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021, when this like technology came out. There were so many things happening at one time that it was hard to see at the moment that we weren't just one big community of NFT lovers or whatever. It was actually different subsections and people with different motivations who got into it. And I know for myself, like, I don't do tech. I'm not a programmer or a coder. I'm into like, I love content. I love to listen to podcasts. And for me, like the main difference I saw, which is kind of parallel to the website space, was the podcast in NFT space became less about art and artists when it first started and became more about trading and flipping. And it was less interesting, but it seems like in every form, whether it's the website tech space or like the podcasting space, it seems like each person realizes that there's these underserved markets, and we all have to kind of build the things that serve like whoever we care about the most. And it's crazy that you did that with exchange.
Well, and that's what you're doing with this podcast. It makes it seem like it's just like finding the place where kind of it's not as big, it's not as flashy, but it's still important. And so it's finding the places for that, because like it's easy to say like, hey, do you want to try and make $1 million on this 10,000 generative mint? Like it's like, okay, cool, like let's do that. When it's, hey, do you want to see if you can make $750 for rent on one of one auctions for this month? Like it's not as spicy. Like it doesn't sit the same way. And so I think the podcast like chase the kind of the big like crazy things, and there's definitely a ton of space, because just like I'm sure that I'm coming at it from my really weird perspective where I'm retired and I have kind of not a ton of responsibilities in the world, but I'm sure you're going to get a lot of artists on here who are like actually like making a living, making art. Like that's really amazing to me. Like that stuff is super cool, and to me it's more interesting than like flipping PFP projects and like whatever this thing is, whatever, like whatever. I guess we're all trying to get monkey barrels now. Like that's the thing right now.
Yeah, man. It's interesting because artists are the types of people that I feel like you become an artist when you don't have an ability to function too well in other spaces, because you're just either easily distracted, or you find it challenging to be motivated past a certain point behind like that fulfillment that you get by creating art. And because of that, I think that we sometimes are like the last people to start creating our own stuff. But when we do, it comes from a pure place, because like, there's no, like, we're not becoming fucking millionaires off some people are, but most of us aren't. Like we're doing it because we love like being around other people. Like I like talking to artists, and you like building stuff and creating stuff with other artists.
It's a community.
Yeah. All right. Well, because we have 15 minutes, I want to jump and dive into your current creative career and how you found, because you're primarily operating in the generative space using Cinema 4D and Espresso. So I want to hear about how you kind of found your medium and what drives you to make the art that you're making now, like visually, aesthetically. Like what are the things that you're creating?
I feel like a lot of times like I'm trying to like chase a feeling. Like it is, I don't have I used to have my pin tweet would always say, "Why have one style when you can have all styles?" And I really feel like it's just a matter of chasing this. I don't know, chasing that feeling that I have at that moment, like in how impactful that can be, and kind of like trying to find the beauty and kind of the expressiveness that is with whatever I'm having at that moment. Because I've had so many different styles and like come like full circle 5 times about like just doing this and doing that. Like my mint today is like a PFP project that it's just like I kind of caught a vibe and I was like, I wonder if I could do this. And then it turns out like I was like, okay, cool, like I kind of did it. Like it started off as just like me maybe like making a thing that it would never see the light of day, and then it ends up coming out nice. Like that's a lot of my processes around like exploration. Like for everything that I mint, there's probably like 3 things I throw away.
So it's like a lot of experimentation, and you're kind of chasing a vibe.
Yes, exactly.
And how do you, because I know like as artists we're very sensitive to vibes and emotions and feelings. Like if a certain song comes on, we feel a whole different way sometimes. Maybe like what is it that is creating that vibe for you? Is it traveling? Is it you hearing a song? Is it more ethereal than that, where you just sit there and you get these images or feeling in your head and you try to put it down on the screen? Like what is that? Where does it come from?
I do a lot of kind of sitting and daydreaming, I guess, for lack of a better word, like in moving and building things in my mind, and like getting to a place where it's just like, ooh, that's interesting in my mind, and then I try to go and see if my hands can pull it off, right? Like that's the thing, is like my mind can always come up with like these really crazy like nutso things, and then it's like, well, are my hands going to be good enough to pay it off or not? And that's always the test, is to see if like I can actually figure it out. And like I said, my batting average is not super high, but it does, like, all the failures also make you better going forward. So it's like every time I'm not able to do what I wanted to do, like rather than like toil away at it, like, and kind of beat the dead horse, like I give up on it, I throw it away, I move on to the next thing, I find another thing to inspire me, and then I build from there. But I take all those lessons that I've learned from all the previous failures, and I can build upon them. And over time, I get better and better, and my batting average gets higher and higher, because like as I'm training my mind, I'm also training my hands, and so I'm becoming a better artist, like full stop, like around the whole thing, not just like creatively. Because like I know a lot of people who are really creative in their head and they can't execute, and I know a lot of people who are really good at executing, but they're just not creative as a rock. And so it's like there's nothing there for it. And I think that like having both ends of the spectrum is really important.
I'm curious because you brought up the why have a style when you can have all styles. Do you find that as you do these experiments and you're kind of like recreating these vibes and these feelings, do you find that what you're interested in making through that experiment, that trial and error, do you find that what you choose to create begins to narrow because you like a certain set of things more than others?
I think it kind of ebbs and flows. Like it can become like a feedback loop where you refine in on a certain style. Like there's definitely points in my life where it was just like, okay, like I'm trying to do this, and doing it over and over again, like you start to refine down and get to a style. But a lot of the times, like I end up coming with something that's completely out of left field, and it's just like, oh well, this is like not even tangentially related to what I was just doing. Like it's gonna be a thing that pulls me into a very, very different direction. Even if I am influenced still, it's still so different. It's like the thing that I'm doing now is like my previous project, the last 2 things I minted. One was a GLB sculpture of chemical compounds of drugs. And so that's like very kind of specific. And then now my next thing I'm minting is a toy robot generative PFP project. And it's just like, yeah, there's not a ton of like interplay between those 2 things. I mean, my skill set obviously is the thing that gets me to both of those places, but I find that I end up going all over the place.
Yeah, I've noticed that it's like between the projects, the one through line is your process, and but beyond that, the subject matter is always varied. Yeah, I love what you recently did with the bots. And last time we talked, and just for people to know how fast this guy moves, we talked on Friday, and I was just like talking about how amazing he did which I'll tag his work in the show notes, but like you had done the piece that was responding to the audio, and I thought that piece was so amazing. And then we're talking on Wednesday, and you put out an entire 1,400 PFP project within like 5 days. It's crazy, man.
Sleep is overrated.
Do you get a lot of sleep? I'm curious.
No, I actually do. Like, I sleep like an old man. I go to bed at like 9 p.m. and I wake up at 6 a.m. Like, I definitely have like my circadian rhythm is definitely that of an elderly person.
Man, that's how we all should be, though. I feel like they got the old people know what's up.
Yeah, it's nice. Like, I definitely like it.
Yeah, and so Jake Parker talks about having a creative bank account. What are the types of art that you consume the most, and if they're not the same, what type of art inspires you the most? Is it manga? Is it film? Is it sculpture? What's your thing? What gets you going?
God, I feel like I'm kind of lame. I'm a little bit of a basic bitch when it comes to the inspiration. Like, a lot of it is like the stuff that you would see in Art History 101. Like, just the very basics. Like, a lot of like modernism, like just steel movements, like the Bauhaus movement, like constructivism is like a big influence in my work. Like, but it's, I mean, kind of like your Art History 101 class, like a lot of that. I mean, and I guess that's why it's 101 classes, because like they're playing the greatest hits. So I feel like that's a lot of my inspiration comes from the past and from that. As far as new stuff, like just like looking at the front page of Exchange, like scrolling the Twitter timeline, like there's so much stuff that like going through and going to Object and like seeing what's on Object, like there's so much stuff. Like the stuff on FX Hash is like super inspiring constantly. Like I think those are some of the big things currently that's just like kind of like being in the culture and like letting myself like be exposed to what people are doing with NFTs, like because it's just like, yeah, I made a PFP collection right now, and it's like, well, I never would have done that like left to my own devices. Like it's part of it means a certain thing within the culture, and it's like a thing that people maybe are going to use this as their Twitter avatar, so on and so forth. And so it's definitely a lot of responding to what is existing. So I think that's like me, like one is very basic on one side and one is very basic on the other side, but I think it works out well because I kind of get that melding of the old and the new.
Yeah, totally. It's contextual art. You're responding to the context of what's going on at the moment. That's
trying.
Yeah. And then who are your favorite people in the space? Who do you look at that you think that they're doing it right, whether it's their art, how they do things on Twitter? Like, who are your favorite artists in the space?
Oh man, that's so hard. I feel like this is one that I definitely wasn't prepared for. A lot of the littler guys, like we have, like I have like a group chat that's all the like algorithmic artists who are doing work on Solana, and it's like that group of people is like really like, because there's not a lot of space for them, and so it's really a grind. There's not a lot of like desire in the collectors. Like it's not the thing where it's like the bespoke one of one PFP collection where like a lot of those things are selling for hundreds of SOL each time. Like there are people who are grinding out 2 SOL sales, and like I think that's like really, really admirable. I think that's like hard to put my finger on like certain people in general, but I think it's like generally the people who are kind of grinding it out, and because there's like a wealth of them that are just working hard every day to try and get a little bit more and a little bit more, trying to get their art a little bit more out there. And hedging everything on the whether or not they make a sale, and it's all important to them. Like, so I think those are the people that really inspire me.
Mostly because of the story of what they're creating and how they're kind of working against the tide. That inspires you.
Yeah, and it's like it's something that like I look back at my past, and it's kind of like maybe I can see myself in that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I'm rooting for that group of people to like make it. It's like I don't know if you know Kiramoto. He's an artist in the space, but he's just recently started making some bigger sales, and it's just like, yeah, man, I'm doing fist pumps over here. Like, I'm really excited for him. Like, it's one of those things you start to see somebody like break through, and it's like, yeah, man, this is what you do. This is what you do the work for.
Yeah. Who is this again? Kiramoto? How would I spell that?
Kiramoto.
Oh, Oh, yeah, I love his work. Yeah. That guy, I don't know if it's a guy or girl, but that person is for sure. And the quality. Oh, guy, okay. The quality was always there. I love his work. I got to try and get him on here because he is doing amazing stuff. So I would definitely try and include that shout out in the show notes so that people could check him out.
Yeah, he's amazingly talented. And just like an example of somebody who's like breaking through right now, and it's just like so happy, like so nice to see people getting wins.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Shouts out to Kiramoto. The work is amazing, and I'm glad to see him succeed too, because sometimes you see things, and not to be an elitist or unfair, but sometimes you see things where you wonder if the artist even cared, and when you see the work that some people are putting in and the thought that when you see those people win, you feel like, yeah, you feel like it's fair, because sometimes the hype can really drive things, and you know, it is what it is. But yeah, shouts out to him. And I want to be respectful of your time. We're kind of hitting that 15-minute mark, but I'm super grateful that you came on. You will be my first guest, and I couldn't have asked for a better first guest. Yeah. I'll try to edit it and make sure you're the first episode too, because I think this is a great foot to start on.
No, I had a blast. This was great. I like you said, coming back. Like, I'd love to come back. Like, whenever, man.
For sure, I would love to have you back, man. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Did you do anything special for 4th of July yesterday?
Had a little barbecue action. Nothing too crazy. Like, I just got my first negative COVID test yesterday, so it was the first time I could go out and be with people again. But took it a little easy because I'm still healing up. Still got this stinking cough.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, rest up and get better. And I cannot wait to have you back and see what you're doing in the future, because I know for a fact at the rate that you move, it's going to be dramatically different than even now. So I'm curious to hear about it.
I love it.
Thanks, man. Have a great day, man.